I got a few questions. Questions. Where do you get your protein from? Isn't it expensive to be vegan? Questions. I got a few questions. Haven't we evolved to eat meat? It's natural. I got a few questions.
It's vegan. Hi, thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Shh, we're all pod. I am your host, Manuel. And so today I want to talk about kind of being yourself. Now, I know that's a vague topic, but lately there's been a lot of kind of controversy around people giving other people advice on how to be themselves. Now, I don't want to start this off with saying, hey, I have a problem with that. But I kind of have a problem with this situation because it's very difficult to kind of give someone some almost deep-rooted, objective advice because you don't really know their entire story. And even if you lived side by side with them, you truly don't know how they processed the information and how their minds interpreted it based on their perspective and how they've seen things. So when we give advice, it should be kind of like, this is just my opinion. Please take it or leave it. There's this kind of vague impression that when we give people advice, we're kind of just expecting them to just take our advice. Now, I know at first glance, you're like, no, you don't have to take it. It's whatever. I'm just trying to help you out. That's the thing. That thing is riddled in some sort of manipulation. So what I suggest we do, which is ironic because I'm telling people not to give advice, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start working on myself. Really kind of internalizing and processing information from my own voice, my own opinions, my own thoughts. At first glance, you're like, well, how else are you supposed to do it? Everybody's doing it that way. Now, let's take a little second to acknowledge the fact of social media, YouTube, all of these television shows that are streaming 24 hours a day. All that stuff is processing into your mind, into your subconscious mind. So if you watch it so readily, if you watch it all the time, basically, on repeat, that information goes into your brain and you start to kind of interpret the world from that perspective. Now, I'm not saying everybody's impressionable and you watch one show, all of a sudden you think the world is a bunch of fighting dragons and people slaying each other. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that when you watch things over and over again, your mind doesn't know what's real and what's fake. And because you drop into a lower level of consciousness when you're watching a television show, hence why, infomercials and commercials are so effective, because they put us into this state where we're so susceptible to information. Well, when we're watching shows from that consciousness, that lower consciousness, all that information is being processed and we're taking it as reality. And when we walk the world, we kind of have that screen, that filter of that reality, kind of filtering our perspective on the things we see day to day. A great example would be love stories, for instance. If you grew up watching amazing movies about people falling in love and the way love is supposed to be and all this beauty and gorgeousness, and there's one little fight and then they make up and then their lives are happily ever after. When you were raised believing that is how love is, you tend to, without knowing it, set your standards to that being your bar of how you're going to perceive love, how you're going to expect love. And you don't allow for interpretations from your own mind or the world itself. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because anybody who has a YouTube channel, a podcast, a social media influencer, just be very mindful of the content that you're putting out there. And I don't mean the images and your vocals and your information. What I'm saying is just be mindful of disclaimering the context of how you're delivering this information. Because sometimes when we're searching and, surfing through YouTube, we're kind of looking for something to validate us. So if you tell us the context in which this information is being presented to us, at least we can be more discerning and say, well, that doesn't fit in my life. So I'm not going to take that information, which is great because we need to start thinking more for ourselves. And on that note, I suggest, now this is just my opinion, just take some time away from TV, just long enough. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about anything streaming on all of the Hulus and the Netflixes and all of the streaming that you get access to on your phone, on your computer. That doesn't mean stop watching stuff. Just take a beat, take a moment, either read a book, because when you read books, you tend to interpret them how you see the world yourself. So there's no influence on how you're supposed to perceive a book, because it's just literature. Or go take a walk, meditate, take 5 minutes a day, and just kind of figure out what your thoughts are about the world. And what it does, it kind of flushes all the white noise, which is what I call the external influences. All the white noise, it flushes it out just long enough so you can get a perspective, especially if you're looking for an answer to a problem that you're having in your life, whether it's to go in the direction of a new career, follow your dreams, be married, fall in love, have kids, paint your house, move, build a house, whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're the one making that decision. You want to make sure you're the one that's going to make that decision, because you're the one that's going to have to live with it. And you have to consider all parts of who you are. Not who your next door neighbor is, not who the guy on YouTube who you follow, not the woman on Instagram who's posting beautiful pictures of her life. Don't be so caught up in that stuff, because that stuff is beautiful and it's amazing interpretation of perspective or art. But you got to create your own version of that. And you can admire people, but don't become that information. Don't allow that information to deter you from making your own decisions. So if you're ever feeling stuck, like you just can't make a decision for yourself, just take a moment alone with no distractions, no external distractions. Just a moment. Some people need 5 minutes. Some people need a day. Some people need a week. Some need more. Whatever works for you, just take time for you. Because in the end, you're the one that has to live with the decision you make. So on one hand, for the viewer, try not to let too much of the influence get into your subconscious mind, meaning create space in between how often you watch this content, so you can understand who you are and understand your thoughts. Because whether we know it or not, that information is getting seeped into our mind, and it's influencing our decisions or our lack thereof. Now, for the people who are creating the content, please disclaimer the context of how you're delivering this information. So if you're telling somebody, hey, you want to have a better life, wake up at 5 a.m., hold up, pause, tell them the context. Are you rich? Do you have a job that requires you to be there at 5:45? Do you have somebody supporting you? Where do you live? What is your story? Tell them that story before you make that suggestion, because people are going to think success equals waking up at 5 a.m. And that's just how the world works. And it's your job as a content creator to keep things within context. And that goes for all of us. Even this podcast that I'm doing right now, all this information is based on my experience in my life. And right now, the way I'm doing this context podcast, is because I want people to understand that the title of my podcast is called "Shh, we're all effed up." Some of us are just looking up at the stars. And what that basically means is that we're all starting from the bottom. We're always starting from the bottom. Some of us choose to look up, and some of us choose to look down. That's the only difference. The people who choose to look down, that's their perspective. The ones that choose to look up, that's their perspective. I choose to look up, because up to me feels limitless. Limitless. I can just keep going, because I love experiencing new things. However, please consider this into your own life, into your own world. And don't let anybody else tell you how you should think, how you should feel. Only you can do that, because in the end, you have to live with those decisions. All right. Have an amazing week. Take care. Again, this is Shh, we're all fucked. Some of us are just looking up at the stars. My name is Manuel. Have an awesome day.
I got a few questions.
Namaste.
I got a few questions. Questions. Where do you get your protein from? Isn't it expensive to be vegan? Questions. I got a few questions. Haven't we evolved to eat meat? It's natural. I got a few questions.
It's vegan.